this video, I'm going to teach you this loop. However, how you use it is completely up to you. Be creative and show me how creative you were, because I'd love to see how you apply the techniques. It's really simple, and all we're going to do is, in our default scene, press X to delete the default cube, and then press Shift-A and search for a UV sphere. Then we'll go ahead and select our camera, press Alt-G to clear location, Alt-R to clear rotation, RX90 to rotate it by 90 degrees on the X-axis, GY to grab it back on the Y-axis till it's just behind the sphere, after which you can press 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view, and then you can select this sphere and just scale it up till it goes outside the camera's bounds. So maybe something like this is alright. After that, you can press tab to go into edit mode, go to face select by pressing this button and then double tapping A to deselect everything, and then pressing C for circle select, and just select all of the faces that are present within the camera's view. Once you have all the faces selected, press X, delete faces. This is going to be the dome within which we'll place whatever our main object is going to be. However, we will also tab back out to go into solid mode and then go to modifiers properties and add in a subdivision surface modifier. And then we'll just increase the levels to maybe 3 for both the views and renders, and up here we'll click Object, Shade Smooth. Then we'll press Shift-A and search for a mesh circle, UV sphere, or an icosphere. We'll go with icosphere for today, and just scale it down till it fits within the camera view again, and then press Ctrl-4 to give it a subdivision surface of level 4, increase the value on the render to 4 as well, and then click Object, Shade Smooth. And that's actually all there is to this tutorial in terms of modeling. Next, we're going to go ahead and set all of our render defaults and take care of the texturing and the animation together. So we'll first select our camera, go to the camera properties down here, go to the viewport display and increase passport out all the way to 1 so that we don't see anything outside the camera view. Then we'll go to our render properties, switch on bloom and screen space reflections. We'll expand screen space reflections and switch on refraction. Then we'll go to the output properties, change the frame rate to 30 frames per second, change the end frame to 150 so that it's a 5-second long animation. The output folder can be whatever you want it to be. File format has to be FFmpeg video. And of course, the encoding container has to be changed to MPEG-4, and an output quality of perceptually lossless will do fine. After that, we can change the viewport shading to rendered so that we can actually see the changes that we make, and we can go ahead and remove the light source. Apart from that, we can go to the world properties over here and increase the color all the way to white. Once you're done with that, we can select the outer sphere that we created and bring your cursor to the junction of these two windows, click and drag to add in a new window, and then we can quickly change from the 3D viewport to the shader editor. We can press the plus button to add in a new material and then just zoom in a bit and start off with the other nodes. So we'll press Shift-A and search for a noise texture, and then press Shift-A and search for a Voronoi texture. And we'll plug the color from the noise texture into the vector of the Voronoi texture, and we'll press Shift-A to search for a color ramp, and we'll plug the color of the Voronoi texture into the factor of the color ramp. Then this value is what's going to drive the roughness. After you plug it, be sure to play around with the scale on the noise texture and the Voronoi texture to adjust it to your liking. And in case you can't see anything, go ahead and just reduce the base color a little bit and you'll start seeing the reflections. So then adjust the scale to your liking. We'll go with a scale of 5 on the noise texture and a scale of 10 on the Voronoi texture. However, we're going to change the noise texture from 3D to 4D and then drag it to the side and press Shift-D to duplicate it and get another node down. And then we can mix these two while changing the W to make it perfectly looping. So we'll press Shift-A and search for a mix node. If you're using Blender version 3.3 or before, it's going to be called the mix RGB. Change it from float to color and then just plug it in between the noise and the Voronoi and plug the color of the second noise texture into slot B. Then expand the timeline a little bit, press back to go to frame 0 and then hover over the W and press I and then go to frame 150 and then change the W all the way to something like 0.1 and then press I. And then on the noise texture down here, just hover and press I while you're still on frame 150, and then go back to frame 0 and change the W value to minus 0.1 and press I. And finally, with the mix node, press I while making the factor 0 when you're on frame 0, and then go to frame 150 and make the factor 1 and then press I. Once you're happy with that, select the noise texture, the mix node, and the second noise texture. Go down to the timeline and press T linear. And that way you'll get the background to nicely move in a linear fashion. Of course, the playback might get laggy, so change it from play every frame to frame dropping. And that's all you have to do. Of course, since this is procedural, at any point of time, you can change the scale, maybe make the noise texture 10, and 10 on both the noise textures. Make sure whatever changes you make on this one, you have to make it on the second one for it to be looping. So that way you can actually search for a value node, plug that into both the scale values, and then you can play around with a single value. So that's all there is to create this particular looping animation for the background. Now we can work with the actual object. So for the object, I'm going to press new to add in a new material. And this time I'm going to go to the material properties down here, scroll all the way to the bottom settings, change the blend mode to alpha blend, and switch off show backface. Along with that, I'll check screen space refractions. Once you've done this, you can go ahead and increase the transmission value all the way to 1 and reduce the roughness all the way to 0. After that, you can give it whatever color you want. So I'll go with a hue of 0.5 and a saturation of 1, and then press Shift A to search for a noise texture, and then press Shift A again to search for a color ramp so that we have more control. And this is actually going to go in as bump data. So we're going to have to search for a bump node to convert this from color data to normal data, and then plug that into the normal of the principled BSDF. Now you get this sort of a shape. What you could do after this is just give the specular tint a nice bluish tint so that everything becomes blue. And of course, you can actually just reduce the specular as well, because I don't want too much of white to appear. Once I'm happy with that, I can do the exact same thing to loop the noise texture. So we'll go through it one more time, switch it to 4D, press Shift D to duplicate it and bring it down, then press Shift A and search for a mix node, convert the mix node from float to color, plug it in between the noise texture and the color ramp, plug the color into the second socket of the mix node, go to frame 0, hover over W and press I, go to frame 150, change the I value to something. Maybe this one can be a little bit more, so we'll go with 0.5 and then press I, then hover over the second noise texture, press I, go back to frame 0 and then make W minus 0.5. Remember, it's going to be the negative value of whatever you used in the first one, and then press I, and then change the factor all the way to 0 and press I, then go to frame 150, change the factor to 1 and press I. Then select all 3 of the nodes, go down here, press T, linear, and that's actually all there is to it. Now again, we want to control the scale, the detail, and the roughness for everything. So we'll press Shift A and search for a value node. We'll plug it into the scale for both the top and the bottom. Then we'll change the scale to something like 1. And because we have so many values, we can use multiple value nodes. And to keep track of it, we can go to the side panel here. Remember, you can close the side panel or bring it back by pressing or tapping N. And then you can change the name to whatever you want. So instead of value, we'll call this scale. So we have to change the label to something, let's say scale. And that way it gets changed to scale. And then we can press Shift D to duplicate it. And this one we can call detail, and then plug the value into the detail sockets. And we could ideally do that for all of the values. However, I'm going to go with a detail of 1.5, a scale of 2, and that's actually all there is to the animation. Finally, I'm going to select the original sphere again, change the base color all the way to white. And since we can't actually see anything, what you could do is change it to metallic, and immediately you'll be able to see the really nice reflections happening. And that's actually all there is to this animation. Of course, you could render it just like this, or if you want, you could give the base color as well as a gradient. For example, let's press Shift A and search for a gradient texture, and then press Shift A to search for a color ramp, and then plug the color into the factor, and then change the black slider to maybe a green, and the white slider could become the same color that we currently have, this blue, and then we could plug this into the base color. Of course, we could just bring in the colors a little bit if you'd like, and then the only thing left to do is going to be pressing render animation. Thank you for watching, and I hope this particular video taught you something. At least how you can easily create backgrounds for main objects, or how a background can lift up a main object. For example, in this scene, the glass sphere would have nothing to reflect and would look really, really bland without the background. So how you use it is completely up to you. But what I do know is that videos are going to be coming out every single day. So it's best if you stay tuned and don't miss out any of the future videos. Until they come out, keep creating and stay creative.